I was appointed the very first ambassador for aviation and space education for the Federal Aviation Administration while I was in college. And in that capacity, I've literally traveled across the country. I've gone into high schools, colleges, air shows, all sorts of different aviation events, really trying to be a recruiter for the aviation workforce.
I'm Shawn Staerker. Welcome to the Future in Flight podcast, coming to you from a hangar somewhere near the flight line, where the weather is clear and business is picking up. Today's episode is absolutely incredible. We're starting with Jamail Larkins, a guy who went from 12-year-old flight simulator-obsessed gamer to performing aerobatics in front of 100,000 people as the opening act for the Blue Angels. But that's just the beginning. He's now connecting thousands of young people with over $20 million in aviation scholarships through his platform Aviation Start. Then we're diving into fall flying, why autumn might be the absolute best time to get airborne, where to go for the most epic foliage adventures, and the insider secrets to maximize your leaf peeping game from the sky. And we'll wrap up with this month in aviation history, exploring September's game-changing moments from steam-powered balloons in 1852 to the founding of Cessna Aircraft Company, plus the stories that helped shape modern aviation. From gaming passion to aviation revolution, this episode proves that your wildest dreams aren't just possible, they're inevitable if you refuse to give up. Before we take off, I want to thank our new show supporter, Flight, makers of innovative sunglasses that are lightweight, durable, and comfortable to wear inside the cockpit and out. I've been wearing mine since AirVenture, and I'm absolutely loving them. Head over to flight.aero, join their mailing list, and get $20 off your first order. All right, we're cleared for takeoff. Full throttle, heels to the floor. Picture this. A 12-year-old kid in Augusta, Georgia comes home from school every day and fires up his computer. But he's not playing Call of Duty or scrolling social media. He's flying virtual airlines across the country in Microsoft Flight Simulator, hours and hours, every single day. Fast forward 6 years, and that same kid is performing aerobatics in front of 100,000 people, opening for the Blue Angels. Today, he's connecting thousands of young people with over $20 million in aviation scholarships. Today's story proves that your wildest aviation dreams aren't just possible, they're inevitable if you refuse to give up. Meet Jamail Larkins, founder of Aviation Start and the Dream Launch Tour. This is the story of how persistence, creativity, and an absolute refusal to accept no turned a gaming obsession into an aviation revolution. Our story begins in the late 1990s when many kids Jamail's age were just discovering the internet, but Jamail had already found his calling in the cockpit of a virtual Delta 777.
I was a gamer, probably the very first generation of gamers that were out there. I played Microsoft Flight Simulator for hours and hours. Literally, every single day after I got home from school, I would hop on my computer and play Microsoft Flight Simulator and fly my favorite airliner, fly, an aerobatic airplane, whatever the case was.
For 2 years, Jamail lived in this virtual world, but he didn't just want to fly pixels across the screen forever. So this 12-year-old did something many adults wouldn't think to do. He jumped into an aviation chat room and posted a simple message. Hey, I'm a 12-year-old kid from Augusta, Georgia. I want to become an airline pilot. Does anybody have any advice for me? A Delta Airlines captain saw that message and told him about something called the Young Eagles program. One phone call later, Jamail was strapped into a 1956 Cessna 172, flying over to his house in middle school for the very first time.
I found out about the Young Eagles program when I was 12 years old and took my first flight in that. And after flying over my house, my middle school, I fell in love with aviation.
Falling in love was just the beginning. What happened next would test just how badly this kid wanted to fly. By 13, Jamail wasn't just dreaming about flying. He was already handling the controls like a pro. But there was one massive problem. In the United States, you can't solo a powered aircraft until you're 16. The thought of waiting 3 more years was unbearable. So this teenager did something unprecedented. He petitioned the federal government for an exemption to fly solo before his 16th birthday, something the FAA had never granted to anyone, ever. 6 different flight instructors and 2 flight examiners all wrote letters saying this kid could safely handle an airplane solo. The FAA's response? We need more information, which Jamail later learned was a polite way of saying never gonna happen. But instead of giving up, Jamail discovered something incredible. In Canada, you only need to be 14 to fly solo. So he hatched an audacious plan: go to Canada, solo legally at 14, then return to convince the FAA to grant his exemption. There was just one problem. He needed money, and he wasn't going to ask his parents for it. What happened next is a masterclass in persistence that would make most entrepreneurs quit. Jamail wrote to over 100 aviation companies asking them to sponsor his dream trip to Canada.
I literally found any company that I could that was involved in aviation, asked them if they would help support my dream, and literally 93 of them said no before I got that very first jet.
93 rejections. Week after week, letters arriving with the same message: good luck, but unfortunately we can't support you. Most people would have given up after 10, maybe 20 rejections. But Jamail had a different relationship with the word no.
I think, truthfully, I just didn't understand no. And I think that that's something that a lot of people fall victim to, is that when you start hearing your first few no's, or if you start not experience the progress that you expect or you want to have, that instant gratification, if you don't get it, a lot of people quit.
Then something magical happened. Company number 4 said yes. Then 95, then 96. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be a part of this kid's impossible dream. At 14 years old, Jamail Larkins became one of the youngest Americans to solo a powered aircraft, flying alone in the Canadian skies. But Jamail wasn't done making aviation history. By 16, he was back in the U.S., legally able to fly solo. And instead of working towards his instrument rating like many pilots, he made a decision that would define the next chapter of his life. He was going to become an air show performer.
Literally, I would come home after flying 4 to 5 times a week, or 4 to 5 times a day, and you would be exhausted. You could barely get into bed. I mean, I'm going to sleep when literally the sun is setting, and I'm waking up when the sun is rising. I have bruises all over my body. You're pulling positive 7Gs. You're pushing -5, 4 to 5 times a day, the entire summer.
The training was brutal, but it paid off. At 18 years old, while most of his classmates were heading to college parties, Jamail was performing in front of 100,000 people at the Vidalia Onion Festival.
That was probably one of the coolest experiences, as any pilot. If you go to an air show, getting the chance to see pilots perform aerobatics is probably the biggest rock star moment that any pilot could possibly ever experience.
And he wasn't just opening for anyone. He was the opening act for the Blue Angels. From virtual pilot to Blue Angels opener in just 6 years. But this was only the beginning of Jamail's impact on aviation. College brought new challenges and new dreams. At 21, Jamail walked into banks asking for 7-figure loans to start an aircraft leasing business. You can imagine how that went.
As you can imagine, going into a bank when you're 20, 21 years old and asking them for a 7-figure loan to purchase a fleet of airplanes, you don't get viewed or looked upon favorably by most bankers.
But remember, this is the same guy who got rejected 93 times and kept going. Banking rejections were just another obstacle to overcome. He found alternative financing, made his first deal successful, and built credibility. Soon, he was leasing a 7-figure portfolio of aircraft to flight schools across the country. The key lesson from his journey? Opportunities exist everywhere if you're willing to look beyond the obvious path.
The first thing that I would say is, especially inside the aviation side, do not limit your opportunities. When I first started flying, I thought I was going to become an airline pilot. By going to Oshkosh and Sun 'n Fun and some of these other aviation events, I started to see all of the opportunities that were available inside of the industry.
Success in business gave Jamail something more valuable than money, a platform, and he was about to use it to tackle aviation's biggest challenge, the looming workforce crisis.
We have 83% of all the mechanics that are working on airplanes today scheduled to retire within the next 10 years. We have about 50% of all the commercial pilots working inside of aviation that are scheduled to retire within that same time period. The Federal Aviation Administration is looking to hire about 54% of its workforce within the next 5 years.
But Jamail saw opportunity where others saw crisis. Through his work as the FAA's first ambassador for aviation education, he traveled to schools across the country. Everywhere he went, young people were excited about aviation careers. They had just one question: how can I pay for it?
There's over $20 million worth of scholarships that are given out every single year to people, whether you're 16 years old and you're in high school and you want to get a completely free private pilot's license, you can do that through the commemorative Air Force.
$20 million in scholarships, sitting there waiting for the right people to apply. The problem wasn't lack of funding, it was lack of connection. So Jamail did what he does best. He built a solution. Aviation Start was born, a free platform connecting young people with every aviation scholarship, every flight school, every opportunity they need to turn their dreams into careers.
It's pretty simple. It's completely free, number one. You just go to aviationstart.org. You register for access to a scholarship database.
Today, Jamail's impact extends far beyond his own flying achievements. As the FAA's ambassador for aviation education, he's inspired thousands of students. Through Aviation Start, he's democratizing access to aviation careers. But perhaps most importantly, he's proven that the barriers we think are impossible to overcome often aren't barriers at all. They're just tests to how badly we want something. From great people like the Tuskegee Airmen paving the way for pilots who would come after them, to young people today who will benefit from the resources he's created, Jamail understands that aviation is about more than individual achievement.
I would say one of the people that I would have to give credit to and say that if I could go flying with any of them would probably be a member of the Tuskegee Airmen. That would be a pretty cool experience to just be able to go flying with them, because if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have the opportunity to be a pilot today.
His message to the next generation is simple but powerful.
Your destination you can reach as long as you do not give up. It may take you a little bit longer. It may be a little bit more painful than what you ever expected. But as long as you do not give up, you can make your dream become a reality. And it's up to you to do it.
From a 12-year-old gamer flying virtual airlines to a force of nature connecting thousands with real aviation careers, Jamail Larkins proves that the only limits on our dreams are the ones we accept. His story isn't just about aviation. It's about the power of persistence, the importance of asking for help, and the magic that happens when you refuse to let no be the end of the conversation. If Jamail's journey has sparked something in you, remember, aviationstart.org is waiting with over $20 million in scholarships and resources. Your aviation dream isn't as possible as you think. The question isn't whether you can make it happen. The question is, are you willing to persist through 93 rejections to get to your yes? Coming up next, we take a look at fall flying. What's it like? What do you need to know? And where should you go? Aviation is the leading youth aviation magazine, here to attract, educate, and empower the next generation of aviators. Inside every issue, you'll discover the future of flight through the stories of students, programs, and innovators shaping the skies. And with Aviation's Rising Star program, we're recognizing students with a passion for aviation, celebrating their journey, connecting them with industry sponsors, and fueling their dreams. Got your own aviation story? Aviation would love to hear from you. Check out the website at aviationusa.com. Picture this. You're cruising at 3,000 feet on a crisp October morning, and suddenly the world below transforms into what looks like nature's own paint explosion. Now, we're diving into why fall might just be the absolute best time to get up in the air, and where you can point yourself for the most epic autumn adventures. Before we talk destinations, let's talk about why fall flying is basically aviation on easy mode. When that temperature drops from summer's sweltering heat, something magical happens to your aircraft. Cooler air is denser air, and denser air means your engine breathes like it's been hitting the gym all summer. You'll see shorter takeoff rolls, better climb rates, and landings that feel like butter. Plus, those nasty summer thunderstorms? Pretty much gone. Those bumpy thermal rides that make your passengers turn green? Way less common. Fall flying is smooth flying, and smooth flying is happy flying. So, where should you go? Let's start with the classics. Vermont is basically the Hall of Fame of fall foliage. Morse State Airport in Bennington puts you right in the heart of sugar maple country. We're talking trees that glow orange so bright you'll think someone cranked up the saturation on reality itself. But here's a pro tip that some people forget about. Timing is everything, and it's not the same everywhere. While Vermont peaks in early to mid-October, if you head south to North Carolina's Blue Ridge Mountains, flying into Asheville Regional or Mount Airy, you can catch vibrant colors well into November. It's like having a second chance at fall. Now, let's talk about some hidden gems. Millinocket Municipal Airport in Maine gives you access to Baxter State Park and Mount Katahdin. Picture this, lakes that look like mirrors reflecting mountains painted in fire. It's the kind of view that makes you understand why people spend so much time chasing fall. For those of you in the Midwest, don't sleep on Indiana's Monroe County Airport. The Bloomington area offers fun fall festivals and colorful forests from September through mid-November, and you're not fighting the crowds you'd find in New England. Head west to Washington State, and you've got this incredible elevation gradient. The higher elevations peak early. We're talking September, while the lower areas stay colorful later. Fly into the Marysville-Arlington area, and you can actually chase the colors downhill as the season progresses. And California? Don't let anyone tell you that the West Coast doesn't do fall. The diverse terrain and microclimates create unique displays with aspens, cottonwoods, and maples that'll surprise you. But let's get tactical here. You want to maximize your foliage game? Here are some insider secrets. Get out during the golden hour. That's the 30 to 60 minutes after sunrise or before sunset. The low-angle light makes these colors absolutely pop. I'm talking about the difference between a decent photo and one that gets shared 1,000 times. Second, check local foliage reports before you make your flight plan. Websites and local airports often have real-time updates on peak conditions. Don't just guess. Intel is everything. Third, look for alternative airports slightly off the beaten path. There are plenty of small airports that are close enough to the prime leaf peeping, but that aren't smack in the middle of the crowds. And here's something fun. You can combine fall flying with other epic experiences. Flying into Dallas Love Field for the Texas-Oklahoma football game? You're cruising over landscapes that change from green to gold as you head south. Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport near Boulder, Colorado gets you to a football game with the Flatirons as your backdrop and some of the most stunning aspen displays in the country. Here's a reality check, though. If your first flight doesn't give you those perfect lighting conditions, don't give up. Weather happens, clouds happen. Sometimes you need to circle back another day or try a different time. One more thing that'll change your fall flying trip. Bring backup batteries and extra memory cards. Trust me on this. You'll be taking way more photos than you think, and there's nothing worse than missing that perfect shot because your camera died. The beauty of fall flying isn't just about the colors, though they're incredible. It's about discovering that aviation can be pure adventure. In our world of constant connectivity and instant everything, there's something powerful about climbing up to 2,000 feet and seeing familiar places transformed into something completely magical. Whether you're a student pilot looking to log hours in perfect conditions, or someone who's never considered aviation but loves adventure and amazing views, fall flying is your chance to see why people catch the aviation bug and never recover. So grab your sectional charts, check the weather, and get up there. The colors are waiting, and trust me, the view from up there hits different than anything you'll see on Instagram. Welcome to This Month in Aviation History. This month, we're diving into September, a month that gave us groundbreaking innovations, heart-stopping test flights, and one day that changed aviation forever. September's aviation story spans from steam-powered dreams to cutting-edge attack helicopters, from entrepreneurial visions to moments of profound tragedy. And we're going to cover it all, including a test pilot who accidentally crashed through a hangar wall and somehow made it look cool. So let's set a course for the pass and off into aviation history. Our journey begins way back on September 24th, 1852 in France, with a guy named Henri Giffard, who had what most people would consider a completely insane idea: attach a steam engine to a balloon and try to actually steer the thing. Picture this. It's the mid-1800s, and the only way humans have managed to fly is in hot air balloons that basically go wherever the wind wants to take them. But Giffard looked at this situation and thought, you know what this balloon needs? A 3-horsepower steam engine. So he built what was essentially a giant cigar-shaped balloon with a steam engine hanging underneath it. And somehow, this contraption actually worked. He flew 17 miles from Paris to Trappes, proving for the first time that humans could power and control their flight through the air. Now, I know what you're thinking. Steam engine, open flame, hydrogen gas balloon. What could possibly go wrong? But Giffard actually thought this through. He positioned the engine far enough below the balloon that the heat wouldn't ignite the gas. Revolutionary engineering and careful safety planning? This guy was basically the Elon Musk of 1852. This flight launched the age of airships and would eventually lead to the massive Zeppelins that carried passengers across the Atlantic decades later. Fast forward to September 7th, 1927, and we're in Wichita, Kansas, which, if you know anything about small aircraft, you'll recognize as basically the Detroit of general aviation. Two guys, Clyde Vernon Cessna and Victor Herbert Roos, are shaking hands on a business deal that will literally change how the world flies. They're founding the Cessna Roos Airplane Company, though Roos would sell his interest pretty quickly, leaving us with just the Cessna Aircraft Company. Yeah, that's Cessna, the company that would go on to build the most produced aircraft in history. Here's one of the great things about this story. Cessna wasn't some huge corporation with unlimited resources. Clyde Cessna was just a guy who believed that regular people should be able to fly. He wanted to build airplanes that were reliable, affordable, and this is key, that normal pilots could actually handle without killing themselves. This vision would eventually give us the Cessna 172, which we talked about in our June episode, and literally dozens of other aircraft that have taught millions of people to fly. Sometimes the most important moments in aviation history aren't dramatic crashes or record-breaking flights. Sometimes they're just two guys in Kansas deciding to build better airplanes. Now let's jump to September 8th, 1954, and meet Scott Crossfield, a test pilot who basically made a living doing things that would give normal people nightmares. On this particular day, he's climbing into the cockpit of the brand new F-100A Super Sabre at Edwards Air Force Base for its very first flight. The F-100 was supposed to be America's first production fighter capable of supersonic flight in level flight. A big deal. But as Crossfield would soon discover, being first doesn't always mean being perfect. So he takes off. Everything seems fine, and then engine fire warning light in a brand new experimental jet fighter at altitude on the first flight. Now, most people in this situation would panic. Crossfield, he calmly starts running through emergency procedures while taking mental notes for his post-flight report. He successfully makes what pilots call a dead stick landing. That's a landing with no engine power. But here's where the story really gets interesting. The airplane doesn't want to stop. It's rolling toward a hangar, picking up speed, and Crossfield realizes he's about to crash right through the hangar wall. So what does he do? He rides it out, crashes through the hangar wall, and emerges from the wreckage basically unharmed, clutching his notebook full of flight data. The best part? His detailed observations from this near disaster actually helped engineers fix the F-100 stability problems. Sometimes the most valuable data comes from flights that don't go according to plan. September 7th, 1965. The Vietnam War is escalating and the military has a problem. They need close air support, but existing aircraft are either too big, too slow, or too vulnerable. Enter Bell Helicopter and a test pilot named William Quinlan, who's about to take the first flight in something completely revolutionary, the Bell Model 209, which would become the AH-1 Huey Cobra. This wasn't just another helicopter. This was the world's first dedicated attack helicopter. Basically, they took the reliable mechanics of the famous Huey and wrapped them in a sleek, narrow fuselage that looked more like a fighter jet than a traditional helicopter. Quinlan's first flight proved that this radical design worked. The Cobra was fast, maneuverable, and could deliver devastating firepower while being a much smaller target than previous helicopters. The impact was immediate and massive. The Cobra would go on to serve in Vietnam, where it provided crucial close air support for ground troops. But more than that, it created an entirely new category of military aircraft. Today, every major military in the world operates attack helicopters that can trace their lineage back to that first flight in 1965. And now we come to September 11, 2001. I was probably around the age of many listeners of this show when this happened. And like many who lived through that time, I remember exactly where I was when the world changed. On that Tuesday morning, 19 terrorists hijacked 4 commercial airliners and turned them into weapons. 2 planes struck the World Trade Center towers in New York. 1 hit the Pentagon, and the 4th, United Flight 93, crashed in a Pennsylvania field after passengers fought back against their hijackers. Nearly 3,000 people lost their lives that day, and aviation would never be the same. Before 9/11, flying was different. You could walk right up to the gate and meet someone. You could bring basically anything in your carry-on. Airport security, it was minimal. Flying felt casual, almost routine. After 9/11, everything changed. The Transportation Security Administration was created. Cockpit doors were reinforced and locked during flight. The entire experience of flying became about security first, convenience second. But what I think is important to understand is that the aviation industry didn't just react to this tragedy. It adapted and innovated. Security became smarter, not just stricter. Airlines found ways to make flying safer while still connecting people across the globe. And perhaps most importantly, people kept flying because the fundamental human desire to explore, to connect, to push boundaries, That didn't die on September 11th. If anything, it reminded us why aviation matters so much to who we are as humans. From Givar's steam-powered balloon to the lessons learned from tragedy, September shows us that aviation history isn't just about machines. It's about human determination. It's about looking at problems and finding solutions, even when those solutions seem impossible. Whether it's powering a balloon with steam, building helicopters that fight like fighters, surviving crashes that become learning experiences, or rebuilding trust in flying after an unthinkable tragedy, every story we've covered today is really about people who refuse to let setbacks stop progress. And that's it for our look at this month in aviation history for September. What an incredible flight! From Jamail Larkins' inspiring transformation from flight simulator gamer to aerobatic performer to scholarship connector to the magic of fall flying and the historic moments that shaped aviation in September, this episode reminded us that persistence and passion can literally move mountains, or in our case, move aircraft, through some seriously beautiful autumn skies. Jamail's story really hit home for me. 93 rejections before getting his first yes. Think about that for a second. Most people quit after 5 or 10 no's. But this guy kept going because he simply didn't understand the word no. Whether you're chasing aviation scholarships, planning your first fall foliage flight, or just dreaming about your future in aviation, remember that persistence beats talent every single time. And speaking of not giving up, I need you to help this podcast keep climbing. If today's episode inspired you or taught you something new, please hit that subscribe button right now. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else, subscribing ensures you never miss these incredible stories and practical aviation tips. Here's my challenge. Take just 30 seconds and leave us a 5-star review. Tell others what you love about the show. Those reviews make everything brighter and help new listeners discover our amazing aviation community. And don't forget to check out our newest show supporter, Flight, at flight.aero. To every listener out there, whether you're a flight sim enthusiast like young Jamail, a pilot planning fall adventures, or someone just discovering aviation history, thank you for being a part of this wonderful community. Thank you for refusing to accept no as a final answer, and for proving that aviation dreams have no expiration date. Until next time, keep your persistence strong, your flight smooth, and remember, the view from up there always hits different than anything you'll see on Instagram. We'll see you out there and up there.